Hello, I'm the Pageant Nerd, and today we're joined by none other than Miss Universe 2005, Natalie Glebova, for her first exclusive interview since the Miss Universe 2025 competition in Thailand. Natalie brings a unique perspective to this conversation, having won the Miss Universe crown in the same venue complex 20 years earlier, and returning last November as a judge. Following my recent coverage of the pageant, Natalie reached out to continue the conversation, and I'm so grateful she did. This is a thoughtful, wide-ranging discussion about the competition, judging, and how the Miss Universe brand has evolved. If you enjoy in-depth, respectful conversations about the pageant world, please like and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get into it. Natalie Glebova, what an honor it is to be speaking with you today. It's been a dream of mine to be able to speak with a Miss Universe on my channel, and I'm so honored, genuinely honored that you are my first
Oh my
one.
God.
So
The honor
so
is
no,
mine, Roger, then. To be the first one on your amazing channel, that is an honor of mine. Thank you.
oh, awesome. Oh, that's lovely to hear. So I'm in Australia, you're in Thailand, and we're going to make the technology work. So
To our
it was actually
advantage.
just, yes, exactly. Yes. So it was 20 years ago last year that you were crowned Miss Universe, the first immigrant to win Miss Universe and the second Canadian woman to do so. Um, in those 21 years now, you've obviously had a jam-packed life, raising a family, being a published author, a motivational speaker, so many other things. What have been some of your highlights over that
Mm.
time since you've become a public figure?
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing up the fact that I was the first immigrant to ever win Miss Universe, because that is a highlight in itself, I think. And I oftentimes forget about that, but actually, it is one of my proudest achievements, not because I won the title of Miss Universe, but because I became that trailblazer, as they say, right? That pioneer who opened doors for so many other women. And in fact, I always say that in Miss Universe Canada, prior to me, there had never been any Miss Universe who was an immigrant to Canada. And I was told so many times, Natalie, just don't even try. You see, there's never been one, so why do it? And there was actually a quote that I saw recently. Everyone said it was impossible until a fool came along and actually did it because he didn't
Love
know
that.
that it was
Yeah.
impossible, or
Mm,
she didn't know.
yeah.
And so it really is one of my highlights in general to be able to see that after I had won the title and went on to win Miss Universe, so many women in Canada have come after me, and I've had the pleasure of coaching them and training them and speaking to them and seeing them become incredible title holders. It's just so beautiful to see that many of them have been immigrants. And so I would say that is my highlight still, meeting all of those incredible women along the way on my journey. And just like I was inspired once by Oksana Fedorova, and then I passed on the torch and inspired some other women to compete, and they in turn will do the same for others. So it's a beautiful journey.
I actually had a question that I was going to ask you later on about the fact that after you, there were so many other women in Canada, especially that had immigrant backgrounds, and even in the last couple of years as well. Like, has that been, pointed back to your influence in that regard? Like, has that been kind of acknowledged that you were that trailblazer?
I think so. I'm not really counting, or I have heard it referenced before, and I certainly have written about it, and I have had people who came to me for coaching say that that's the reason why they decided to go, because they saw that it was possible now. And so I think, yeah, I have had the validation of that.
Yeah, awesome. Um, there's so many topics that we're going to cover today, and I've got a whole bunch of things written down. I think one of the sort of more recent topics was the fact that you were a judge at Miss Universe 2025 in Bangkok. I'm going to ask about your experience there in just a second. But obviously, Thailand has such an important role in your life. You were crowned in Bangkok. You ended up settling there. You've been, you were very visible in the 2018 pageant as well. So, what was your reaction when Thailand was announced again as the host for 2025?
I was really looking forward to it when I heard about it because I had seen obviously the production in my year. I think prior to my year, there was in 92 or 93 when
92.
Michelle McLean won.
McLean,
Michelle McLean
yes,
from
from Namibia.
Namibia, who is one of my very good friends, one of the only few Miss Universes that I'm really good friends with. And I've seen how Thailand has consistently provided fantastic showmanship. Just because Thailand is known for their artists and their expressiveness and their culture and the work that they put into their productions. And of course, knowing that Kunnawat is going to be producing it was even more exciting to me because I know and I have seen his shows live and on television. And I've always thought that he's just a fantastic producer. I got a chance to experience being in one of his productions when I crowned Veena from Thailand, Miss Universe Thailand, in the finale of the Miss Universe Thailand 2025 pageant. So I just had the highest hopes of the most beautiful show ever, the most beautiful production, and just everything to be just running smoothly because when I was competing in Thailand, it was the best experience of my entire life, probably. Well, at that point. And it was just the way that they welcomed us and the red carpets that were being rolled out for us left and right, and the hospitality and the niceness of people and the politeness and all of that. So it left such an incredible mark on me. That's why I decided to come back to Thailand and ended up living here. So for me, having Miss Universe and Thailand is such a big association for just amazingness. So I was expecting only the best of the best.
And so, how did your judging role come about for Miss Universe 2025, or your selection committee membership?
Right. I was really just sitting there expecting that call to come at any minute after I found out it was going to be in Thailand. So I was kind of thinking to myself, it's going to happen. And even though time was kind of ticking and getting closer to the pageant date, I still had this certainty, this conviction that I'm going to be a judge at this year's pageant. It just made sense, right? It was my 20-year anniversary of being crowned. It was coming back to Thailand. Just everything that was, all the signs kept pointing to it. And I didn't even think about anything. I took a trip to Mexico, in fact, funny enough. So I went to Mexico while everybody came to compete. And I wasn't planning to come back until just days before the prelims. So I missed out on all of the drama, to be honest, because I was in Mexico. I was there celebrating my birthday. I had such a great time. And meanwhile, on the other side of the world, all this drama started unfolding, unbeknownst to me. And a few people text messaged me and said, "Are you following this?" And I said, no, I'm like so glad to be out of it. I don't want to know. I'm having too good of a time. I don't need to spoil it with the negativity and drama and all of that. And so when I landed back to Thailand, just one day before the prelims, I got the call. Finally, which I thought was coming. And so everything was super last minute. I felt that they didn't really treat me the way that I should have been, to be honest, because I had to, just hustle to find my dress last minute, a makeup artist. I told them, please send me a car. Like I actually had to tell them to send me a car to get me because it was just kind of like, okay, you're in, just show up. And I was like, no, I'm not just going to show up. So at the end, they did help, and the lovely makeup team from MUO staff, from MUO organizers came to do my hair and makeup. And so I rushed, completely jet lagged, still haven't unpacked from Mexico, just found a dress last minute. So I'm there at the show, and they did have a meeting for us as judges. But I guess that will be your next question, right?
Keep going, by all means.
Okay. And so the judges' meeting, which happened, at least what I was aware of, it was the first judges' meeting that the organizers had for us. And I had missed, obviously, the interview portion of the show because I wasn't in Thailand. So at least I guess for me, it was the first time that I had any kind of instructions given to me. But as far as I knew, all the other judges were also like, we don't know what's going on. We don't really know, like, what are they looking for? Who are we voting for? What is our criteria? What is our, rubrics to measure against?
Yep.
Because we know that Miss Universe every year, they have a different idea of who they want. And just because somebody won last year doesn't mean we want the same type of person. Maybe they've changed direction and their marketing seems to want to go in a different direction, right? As far as image, as far as personal brand. So we were just kind of like sitting there and going, please give us instructions. We really want to do well. We really are taking this job seriously. And I saw how all the judges were super involved and super dedicated and had their integrity very strong, except one judge. I'm not going to say who it is. Because this judge said that in order for your favorites to do well, you kind of have to lowball everybody else and give everybody across the board really low marks, and then put your favorites at the top, which is, of course, goes against the integrity of judging people fairly. So I thought that was a little bit unfortunate to hear that somebody would come into this process and try to influence the results in that way.
With favorites already in their mind.
Exactly. And I put my integrity above everything else. And I really said, I need to do a really good job at this. Even though part of me, I have to say, is a little bit turned off by the whole judging process, because as I have been coaching so many women and I see how beautiful they are from the inside out, for me to give an arbitrary score based on how somebody looks in a bikini or in a gown without really knowing who they are, it makes me a bit cringy, I have to say. But I thought, okay, I've been through this process once. I was judged like that to some extent. So these young women, they know what they're in. And so they obviously understand that a big part of this is the objectification of beauty. It is. That's what a beauty pageant is at the end of the day. And so I knew that everybody was expecting me to just give that score. And so I said, okay, I'll do it one more time. This is for Miss Universe. My 20th year anniversary, I have to do a good job and I have to just bring it back full circle and choose the person that I believe deserves it the most. Who will have the most impact ultimately at the end? So they really, at the judges' meeting, they didn't really give us that much of instructions. They just said, everybody here has done a good job, so please be nice to the girls. Don't be, too harsh on them. You know how hard they worked for it, how much they want it. And so they just said kind of be nice. And so no instruction other than that were really given to really look for something that the organization would say, we want this type of person. Just across the board, be nice, and that's it.
So did that give you any sense that maybe they weren't so concerned with, the judging inputs that you were going to be making? Like, did it seem like that you would think that Miss Universe has been around for 70 odd years and admittedly with new leadership, but they would have a really clear idea and they would want to relay that to judges. Like, did that make you sort of feel a bit odd that they weren't that they weren't trying to influence or at least give you better instructions?
Right. And that's a really great question. I think at the time I didn't think about it, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, it did feel a sense of like something's off. But of course, when you feel something's off, you only sometimes realize you felt that after it happened. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. So it's almost like, yes, intuitively, it felt like, okay, something is just not seeming like it's right. But again, at that point, you don't have any hard evidence and you don't have anything to really complain about. And so, yeah, I guess, yes, but also I didn't really think about it at the time.
Yeah. Oh, and absolutely, it wouldn't be something that would come to mind at the time. It's probably just in the with the fullness of time afterwards. So what were your sort of observations around, I guess, getting to finals night and, you know, the level of organization and I guess the, you know, having been to previous Miss Universes and been to one in Thailand 7 years prior, how did you sort of feel that everything was being managed and carried out by the new organization?
You know, I've never been a judge before at Miss Universe, so I don't know how it was in the past. But I do remember Michelle McLean, Miss Universe 1992 or 93? 92.
92, yeah.
92. When she was a judge in 2018, she told me how absolutely incredible that process was, where they were all kept kind of quarantined as a group of judges and really given specific instructions. And she took it so seriously. And I remember she said, I was feeling more nervous than when I was competing to be choosing, because it just felt like the organization was really specific about who they wanted in terms of the criteria. And so she felt like she had to do a good job in the selection committee because she was answering to this organization who has specifically asked her. And I remember I couldn't even meet her in Thailand that year because I wanted to meet up and hang out, but she said, you know, it's very strict and it's all, you know, a process. Nobody can go out anywhere. Like, we're basically sequestered in a hotel and we're not allowed to talk to anybody. So it felt like it was just a real big deal for the judges, and it was important. And in my case this year, I didn't feel like that at all. We were just kind of left to our own devices. And we were free to walk around backstage, and, you know, all the contestants could have, you know, some of them said hello to us, and we were free to interact with whoever we wanted, you know, and it was just, it didn't feel like the judges were placed on this important pedestal.
Yeah.
And taken seriously enough to say that these are the people who are responsible for choosing the next Miss Universe. So treating them in that regard, not with just the respect, but also with the, you know, kind of level of importance and significance, because these are the people. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, and also I have been part of the selection committee in Miss Universe Thailand and Miss Universe Vietnam, Miss Universe Canada, amongst many, many, many other national and international pageants. And especially in Thailand, because of that incredible production, which we're always expecting to see. And even in Miss Universe Thailand this past year, where I had gave the crown to Veena, it felt a lot more organized in a sense that everyone had their rooms, and, you know, just the way that the process was going felt a little bit more organized versus maybe putting the two teams together, the Thai and the Miss Universe organization, the Mexico team, like somehow, I don't know, it didn't show me that they had that same level of professionalism and organization. Perhaps it was the fact that there were just cultural differences that were very strong, and, you know, some things were lost in translation, and two completely different teams clashing, trying to make something really great, but the way that people work is different in different places. So maybe that was also it.
Yeah, absolutely, and very, very fair point. And yeah, those things take time to really, I guess, people learning to work together, especially if there are from different walks of life. Um, as a judge, one thing that I've always been interested in, you when you won in 2005, there was no scores on screen. They had stopped a couple of years beforehand. They came back briefly in the late 2000s for about 4 years. But and there
Oh,
had been
did they?
talk by Qunan a few years ago that they were going to come back, but they haven't. Um, as a judge, and there's one thing that I've always been interested in this non-televised era, are you still punching in numeric scores into a terminal? Like, what's the actual judging process like when you're sitting with the panel?
Yes, it was interesting for me to see as well how it was all going to pan out. And we did get, I think, little iPads or little notebooks, touchpads, where all the contestants were, names were listed, and then we had to assign a numerical score between, I think it was 7.9 to 9.9. So in that range. And they encouraged us to use decimal points to be a little bit more varied. So yes, and that is how we enter the scores, and then the screen cleared, and the next thing would pop up.
And so when on the finals night, when you were seeing the top 30 announced, the top 12 announced, what were your personal responses? And I'm not necessarily talking about individual countries, but your own responses and maybe that of your fellow judges about, some of the selection of, progression of certain contestants. Was there any things that maybe felt a bit unusual?
I have to say that every year, even as an observer and just a viewer, pageant fan, watching it on TV, there are always surprises. There's never a year where it's like, yep, everybody is exactly where they're supposed to be from your perspective. Because everyone has their own opinions, everyone has their own perception of beauty. Also, we have different, maybe even subconscious relationships to the different contestants, right? Based on their country and whatever it might be. Soft favorites because of something that we experience in that country, perhaps. So every year for me has always been surprises. So I was kind of expecting it like that. And indeed, there were surprises in the was it top 30 this year?
Top 30.
Okay. Which I'm glad that they did that because it gave a lot more women the opportunity to shine. And a lot of them who I didn't expect, but I was super happy for because I thought that, wow, what a beautiful experience. But again, as always, watching some of the other contestants, they're standing in the back and my heart kind of shrinking for them because I knew how hard they worked. So definitely, there were surprises in the top 30. Then when we were cutting them down to top
12.
12, thank you. You see, I haven't even watched the show after
No, you
after
you've moved on.
I just kind of went like this. Oh, I'm done.
We'll get to that a bit later, yes, but yeah,
Right. And
sorry, keep going.
so, yeah, so when we were cutting down to 12 and then to 5, I certainly felt that based on performance, and I mean, I'm as a pageant expert as can be, based on performance from my perspective, there have been a lot more, I wouldn't say deserving, but a lot better performers in terms of performance at that moment. But again, I also understood that maybe judges taking into account their entire performance and scores from the interview are also counting. And so that could be affecting the placement at the end. So again, I didn't really think much about it until top 5. And top 5 was definitely a little bit surprising to me because I did look around at the other judges as well. And I got a lot of kind of like raised eyebrows and, facial expressions. I was like, wow, okay, interesting. And so I said, okay, it's not over until it's over. I had my favorites and I knew who I wanted to be in the top 5 and only two of my favorites were in the top 5. And I said, okay, so we still have a chance with these two that could potentially be the winner. Shall we go on to the final? 5?
Please do. No,
Okay.
let's keep it going. Yeah, no, I've got some other questions about after the aftermath, but by all means, yeah, keep going.
Right. So we are in the top 5, and the final questions and the first final question, the second final question come around. And I have to say, again, I put my integrity above everything else. And I thought, I'm going to be as fair as possible here. And even though I have my favorites, I still have to rank people based on how they answered. And I was taking into account the whole package, not just the performance of what I've seen in the prelims or in the finals. Not just the whole package, but also I was taking into account the fact that who is going to have the most impact worldwide with their win. So it wasn't just about who performed the best tonight, but also who performed incredibly well and will have the most impact around the world. And to me, I have to say, as much as I loved Côte d'Ivoire, she was my other second favorite, I thought that Thailand would make the most impact in the world because I had never seen the amount of support, international support for any other contestant like I had done so with Bina. And we had people rooting for her for years. She's such a symbol of resilience, of believing in your dreams, of going after what you want, and ultimate success. It's a hero's journey we all love and we all get inspired by. And I thought, what better way to prove to the world that, yes, your dreams are possible than to have somebody like Bina, who has competed, I think, 4 times over 8 years, who has faced so much rejection and setbacks and watching her dream crumble in front of her. How amazing and inspiring would it be for her to win Miss Universe?
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I thought that she would be the best choice. And so again, being very fair, I gave Thailand and Côte d'Ivoire the first top scores because certainly Côte d'Ivoire would have made a fantastic Miss Universe too. Absolutely. Nothing would take away from her win other than the fact that she performed and she deserved it. And I would have been just as equally said, you know what? I'm glad that I gave her that top score. And so when the finalists were being announced and Côte d'Ivoire was the last place as 4th runner-up, it was just a shock. And you could feel that shock around in the audience. Just everybody was just like, what? Impossible. No. It was almost like it felt at that moment like she was deliberately being last. It was just probably the worst shock of the entire contest for me. And then when Thailand and Mexico were the last 2 standing, again, the energy started rising in the audience where it felt like it was just buzzing with the fact that, okay, Thailand is going to win because it's Veena, who everyone is rooting for. 2, we're on Thai soil, Thailand winning in Thailand. They had the first runner-up last year or whenever that was with Antonia.
Yeah.
And it just felt like this is it. Like I looked around and I saw so much hope in Thai people's eyes because it was like, this is it, guys. This is what we've been wanting to happen for so many years. We've wanted Thailand to win. And I just felt like this is it too. I felt like, and I am part of that. I just felt like I was certain that Thailand was going to win. So I just felt like I am a part of this, making this history, and I made that happen. I felt so proud of myself. Because, again, not to take away anything from anybody else, but performance-wise and that inspiration-wise and in every other way, so many people could see that Thailand was the one. And when Mexico was ultimately announced, it was just a moment of disbelief for me. And I looked around, people were crying. It was just, I just felt like my heart break into a million pieces at that moment. And I know that everybody has their favorites. I know Mexico has her fans, and Mexican people were so happy. So every year in every pageant, it's the celebration and the heartbreak in the same moment. And that's why we like to watch it, because of that drama. That's what draws us to this universe, because it does have all of those incredible emotions mixed together, the excitement and the heartbreak and the celebration and also grief, right? And so I understand that. And I would have been completely fine with that, because I've seen many times that happen and my favorites didn't win. And okay, I accept it. The crown goes to Mexico. Congratulations. You know, whatever, for whatever reason, it was meant to happen. The universe, you know, the stars aligned and she got the crown. So I was completely in acceptance of that. But then, and I guess that would lead me to your next question, right?
Absolutely, yes. So, in the immediate aftermath of the pageant, you posted on your social media about your selection of Vina as your favorite. If you don't mind, I'm actually going to read word for word your post, because I feel like it's very, very telling for someone as a former Miss Universe to actually go on record to state this. I thought was really very, very telling. So Natalie's post, which many of you would probably have already seen. As a judge this year, I can only speak for myself when I cast my votes. Please remember that each person has their own opinion and not one single person can influence the result. However, this must be said, when I competed in 2005 and years prior, I recall there was always an auditor that came on stage with sealed results from the accounting firm. I'd like to bring that back, please. Until then, I don't think I'll be participating as a judge again. What were your, I guess, describe your emotions, and I guess what actually led you to go on record and say something like that? Because, you know, it's obviously, you're a former Miss Universe. It's a lot of, it's fine for us pageant fans or other observers to say these types of things, but as a former Miss Universe, it must have taken a lot of courage.
Yes, yes. And I felt like I just had to say something because, again, I put my integrity above everything else. And if I don't say what I feel like I'm not being authentic. I'm just playing into, and again, I don't have any concrete proof of any wrongdoing. It's just all of these little happenings and little facts that are aligning that make you feel that you start to question, but why? Why isn't there any accountability? Why aren't the judges' score being displayed, which actually also keeps judges accountable to not lowball, like the other judge was saying, that you lowball the ones that you don't want and then give just one high score to your favorite. So that would keep the transparency in the organization by allowing the judges to also take accountability for what they're posting and how they're judging. So it keeps them wanting to be fair because they're on display. And of course, not having any kind of accounting firm to verify the scores, that also just kind of started swirling around in my head. And I was thinking, okay, something feels off. Let me talk to the other judges. And every judge that I've spoken to, and I think I've spoken to probably 70% of them, were surprised. Were surprised that Miss Mexico won, that they were surprised by the placement of the top 5, by the ultimate placement from 4th runner-up to winner. And I asked the ones that I've talked to, I said, who was your number 1? And they all said somebody other than Mexico. So I'm just going by what I'm a judge, and I'm speaking to most of the other judges. So it's like, if 80 or 70 or 80% of us didn't vote Mexico, why is she the winner? That was just a very strange thing to me, and putting everything together, it just felt something's off. Then in addition to that, of course, I felt like I had the responsibility for Thai people to also let them know that I am behind Miss Thailand all the way, not because I lived here for 20 years or because I was crowned here or because I have any kind of connection to Thailand. She really was my favorite from the very beginning. Just loved her. And as I said, she would have been a fantastic Miss Universe with that impact that she would bring to worldwide to make people believe in their dreams and go after their dreams. And of course, I started getting immediately nasty comments, hate thrown around on social media. First from Thai people saying that, how could you do this? And so I said, look, I really don't want to have anything to do with this. So I made that post almost kind of impulsively and running on very high emotions. And then I just turned off my phone and I pushed it aside and I said, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to know anything. And I didn't go on social media for 2 months. I didn't even look at my Instagram for 2 months because I understand that no matter who wins, there's always going to be something. Somebody's going to be unhappy. There's always going to be critics and haters and people who are judging you for whether you do something right or whether you do something wrong. Somebody's going to be judging you. That's the nature of social media. But I am trying to create a world from within that is based on higher frequency. And being involved and even just reading these comments would lower that frequency. And I didn't want anything to do with that because I know that if we want a better world, we have to start within ourselves. And I needed to keep my frequency in love and compassion and gratitude and all of those high vibrations. And I did not need to argue with anybody or listen to anybody because it was out of my hands anyway. And I said, you guys have fun out there with your comments and enjoy the drama, but I'm out. And yeah, so that was that.
So it would be remiss of me, I guess, to ask then, what motivated you to actually want to, I guess, revisit the topic? Because I would completely understand if you were just going to say, you know what, that's it. But what has sparked, I guess, your desire to, to speak about it again?
I thought about quitting pageants completely. I'm done. I've said that many times to many of my friends. I was like, that's it, done. Not coaching anyone anymore, not participating, not hosting, not judging. I'm done. And I think it was really a sense of heartbreak, not just because my favorite didn't win, but because I carry this brand of Miss Universe for the rest of my life. I can't go anywhere without this title. That's it. Like, I have this brand. And so whatever happens with the brand, it directly reflects on me. And so I almost felt like because of that integrity was broken and that trust was broken, that my heart was broken as well. It was almost like, oh, the organization that I revered and thought, held in such high regard as far as integrity and honesty and empowerment of women and all of the things that we love Miss Universe for, is just the image crumbled in my eyes, and therefore my own self-image started crumbling. And that's why I immediately just pushed it away and I said, I refuse to engage. But as time heals a heartbreak, time has kind of made me see that, you know what, let's not go out on a negative note. Let's bring back the image of Miss Universe with incredible women who didn't just win titles, but went on to do incredible things. And the Miss Universes and title holders who are still the backbone of this industry, of this pageantry, and who are continuously doing so many incredible things to make the world a better place. Let's make it about them. And if I'm just going to run away from it, you can't run away from anything anyway. So I thought I'm going to be the voice of change, to bring back what we all love about the pageants, which is that inspiration, that the connections that we make with people, the way that we empower other women, the way that we do charity work, the way that we give ourselves to others. And that's what the actual Miss Universe title is. And so I need to be that person, and I'm going to bring back the glory of Miss Universe name just by being and embodying that version of Miss Universe. And why not talk about it? Why not? If pageantry still has any future, and I think it can with the right changes and the right leadership, I want to be in the forefront of saying that this is what pageantry is about, and not give in to the negativity, the drama, the negative emotions, and negative comments that are going around, but just lifting up other young women and supporting them through this journey. So this is why I'm back.
And we're absolutely thrilled for that. One of my, I guess, personal observations is that pageantry, at least in these days, there's this constant tension between being an entertainment product, but then also all of that, as you were saying, the philanthropy, women's empowerment, and really helping others. In terms of the future of pageantry, do you think that those two things can coexist, or how do you think that pageantry can go forward and survive with, I guess, a current, modern day mindset?
Yeah. And I can see why pageantry has gone the way that it has, because now we're competing with so many other entertainment programs and content, and people are consuming it in 15-second reels and 50-second snippets, their information and their entertainment. So definitely, I understand the changes that have happened in order to stay alive and relevant. But I have to say this: if we take Miss Universe and make it a nonprofit organization, then it takes that pressure out of performing and growing and return on investment and economic growth of this organization away, and then just focus on the things that Miss Universe really is about, which is charity work, awareness about important issues, which is all marks of an NGO, right? And like NPO, nonprofit organization. So if we can create a nonprofit organization and take the business side out of it with the right leadership, I think it can still be relevant to those pageant fans who are never going to abandon it. But it wouldn't be about growth. It wouldn't be about getting more viewers and getting more money and more sponsorship. It would just be a sustainable organization that would self-sustain, right? And then create so much positive impact. And you know how it is, when something creates positive impact, it's just abundance flows. And there's always going to be support, because so many companies would want to support something like that. Right? Because all big companies, they want to give back. There's the corporate social responsibility aspect of each organization. So of course it's going to flow. So I really hope for that one day.
I think we all do. It would also be remiss of me if I could maybe just indulge my historical side of things. I'm thrilled to obviously have you on the channel, and I would love to just maybe ask you for a couple of more lighthearted questions about when you won Miss Universe, maybe back to the happier days of Miss Universe. Even though back in 2005 there wasn't social media and a lot of that pressure that a lot of the contestants would face these days, you were considered one of the favorites for the title. Did you feel that when you were competing or they're leading up to it? I mean, there were blogs and things like that, but did you have any sense of the expectation?
We did have the message boards, remember?
Yes.
Were you one of the people on the message boards?
Oh, probably, yeah.
I'm sure I would have seen some of your comments, because I did read them, of course. When you start entering the competition, you want to know everything you possibly can about it. So you dive deep and dig down and, read everything and try to understand what is this about. So yes, I did read and I did hear things, but to be honest, I didn't really feel like the favorite almost until the very end of the pageant in Thailand, because there were, well, yeah, I mean, I got an award by Global Beauties, right, as Miss Photogenic, which is like a very big deal in the lead up of the pageant. And then I also had some people would show me newspapers where they had predictions in Thai newspapers. And I was almost always in the top 5. I think always in the top 5 in Thailand, because Thai people really believed in me. And so it wasn't really until the very end that I was like, oh, okay, well, I am one of the favorites, so that's great. But I still didn't think that I was going to win, to be honest. I just thought, I'm just here for the amazing experience. Like, this is it. Like, what more could I possibly want? I don't care if I win. I'm already living my dream.
Yeah. And your amount of preparation, how would you say that it compares to contestants these days, where obviously the level of coaching is quite intense? I mean, I know that Miss Universe Canada, in the 2000s had a massive renaissance, but how did you personally prepare? Like, did you have, a daily wardrobe and it all listed out? And I mean, like, did you have everything mapped out like that?
I did, but it felt like it was me and Dennis and Miguel. This was my team, me, Dennis, and Miguel, who were, of course, Dennis being the national director of Miss Universe Canada, Miguel, who worked for, and it still is one of my best friends to this day. And it was just us deciding what I'm going to wear each day. A lot of the outfits I had bought myself. It's just stores that I could afford at that time. I had a couple of gowns from a Canadian designer, just a few dresses. And then I had one evening gown from Colombia. That was the one that I was going to wear for prelims and for finals. So I had a pretty modest wardrobe compared to everybody else. And I can only imagine, even like now you see contestants arriving with 15 bags and they're head to toe designer outfits. They're sponsored by some of the top designers in the world. And I think those organizations that have that kind of power and the money and everything, they actually have more pressure than the girls that don't. And I can only imagine how much pressure ladies like Thailand, Philippines, Venezuela, India, and Indonesia, and some of these powerhouse countries, how much pressure they feel, because first of all, the organization has them in a very tight loop. So they can't even move around. They can't even go to the bathroom without permission. I mean, I'm just kidding. Of course, it's not like that. But they have an ironclad contract. They have to wear what is being given to them. They don't really have a say in a lot of things. And there is that pressure for them. And I actually, as much as it looks glamorous, we have to also understand that it's not easy for them. It's much easier for somebody who's like Canada, who doesn't really have any wardrobe, and who doesn't really have that much support from the country that's like, please win the crown for us. For some of these countries, it's like, if I don't win, it's like I've done something bad. They feel guilty, so it's not easy.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was, but it's actually a good segue into the next question that I was going to ask, because when it was down to the final two, when it was you and Cynthia from Puerto Rico, who Puerto Rico is obviously a huge pageant country. Yeah. They ended up winning the following year.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, when you're standing with her, I can see you mouth the words, "I'm so happy for you," or "I will be so happy for you," or something like that. Do you actually recall that moment?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I was convinced that she's going to win. Convinced. Because she was one of the favorites and she did such a fantastic job and she obviously looks the part. And I don't know, I don't want to say I wasn't confident in myself. I knew that I could win, but it just felt like, oh, well, it's such a small chance out of all of these amazing women. Me, like little me, who's going to win? Like, forget it. It's not going to happen. So I just said, I just went into the state where I was like, you know what? I am top 2 at Miss Universe. Regardless of what happens, I'm the happiest person alive right now in this moment. Because to be holding hands with as the last two. Who could dream about a moment like that? I couldn't even dream that. And so I said to Cynthia, I can't remember if I said, I'm so happy for you, or I will be so happy for you, but it was something like that, that I expressed my happiness for her, the empathetic joy that I was feeling at the moment, where I was like, you know what, I think it's you, and I'm so happy for you, like genuinely. And I just said, okay, let's go. And thinking that it's going to be her. And when I heard the words Canada or Puerto Rico, the first runner-up, that means Canada is Miss Universe, that was just the biggest surprise of my life. I really did not expect that.
I love that animated video that you've done. Anyone who has not seen it, I will put a link of it in the description. It is absolutely incredible. It's like basically your journey to the crown, which, being an immigrant and everything, it was so well put together. And that is, part of it as well. I actually wasn't going to ask you about this, but how did that actually come about? That video?
Yeah, a friend of mine had a company that did these animated videos, and they had a YouTube channel at the time where they would take stories of people, sometimes really harrowing stories, but always inspirational. Things about how I gave birth for 30 hours without epidural, or somebody who's been molested, or somebody who's been bullied. And so people would submit these stories, and they created these animated videos. And the channel was doing really well for some time. And a friend of mine offered, they had a whole team of people to do it. So I told my story, they animated it, we put a script together, I voiced over the script, and yeah, we just did it. It was like a fun project.
Yeah. I know it's absolutely wonderful, and I could, it's very heartfelt as well. So coming out of winning Miss Universe, I mean, obviously we've got your one of your amazing books over your shoulder there. How did, I guess, the opportunities as Miss Universe come about? Like, were they things that, I guess, came to you? Did you have to kind of source them yourself? Like, how did you, maybe towards the end of your reign and coming out of your reign, how did you then map out what's next?
I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I passed on the crown. The only thing I knew was that I'm taking a chance and an adventure of a lifetime by moving to Thailand, and then I surrendered to the rest. And I did get a job offer to work for a company, Sing Beer, or they have more things than beer, but I was the brand ambassador for them for a year. And at that point, that's all I knew. And I thought, if anything, I always have my home back in Canada, or I could pretty much go anywhere in the world. But I thought that, it just felt intuitively that Thailand was going to be a very special place for me. And the journey went on and on and on, and incredible opportunities came around. And I had such a beautiful career in the entertainment industry for this past 20 years. And and then all these books came out. I've written 3 books. And so it's just, I guess it needs to come out of me. It's like pouring out of me every couple of years.
And how did that, I guess, because I think a lot of those ideas, and, you were talking about, operating on higher frequencies and, having empathy and things like that. A lot of people have those thoughts and feelings in their heart, and but it actually takes a lot of more effort and courage to actually then become a published author and share those thoughts with other people. How did that, I guess, eventuate where you, I guess, took that leap of faith?
I haven't really thought about that, but that's a really good question. Wow.
what I guess, to actually go to that extent of, putting down all your thoughts. I mean, it's one thing, I guess, to share it or to speak about it, but to then actually, I've got some good friends who are published authors as well. And I mean, it's a lot of work, and it's about really refining the message, and I guess making sure that it's going to have an audience as well.
I guess I don't really think that my message is fully complete. It's just I'm still searching for it myself. It's like the more I discover myself, and the more I learn, and the more I grow, and the failures and the dark moments, they all are like lessons for myself, and I just feel like I have to share them, because if I don't share it, it's almost like would have been in vain for having to go through some of these things. And so in the past several years, especially, having gone through a really terrible divorce and becoming a single parent and going through ups and downs of all kinds, having one book become really successful and the other one not being as successful, and feeling kind of like a flop, and sometimes feeling like failure. And moments where I feel on top of the world, where I'm doing what I love, and then moments where nothing is happening and I have to sit in that nothing special, right? So all of these moments, I feel like there's such amazing learning opportunities. And so as I grow through them and as I learn from each one, I feel like that's just what I've been put on this earth to do, is just to pass on that message to other people, because I know that I'm not the only one going through it. So if one person, two people, a handful of people, or thousands or millions of people hear my message, it doesn't really matter as long as I put it out there. So that's what keeps me motivated to do it.
Awesome. And look, we're all the better for it too. I know I could keep chatting to you, but I know we've got to wrap things up. But I guess just in terms of what's, you touched on it, in terms of what the future holds for you, in terms of other opportunities or other types of, mediums that you're looking to communicate through. What are the types of things that you're looking to do from I guess, sharing the message?
Yeah. My next big thing that's coming up is a TEDx talk, which is happening in Bangkok on April 26th. And it's TEDx Tonglor Women. So it's only for women to unmute our voices, to talk about how to create a beautiful future. And I am going to have a conversation about how winning Miss Universe and having my own patterns has kept me in a loop of seeking dopamine in forms of relationships, and how I attracted a certain type of relationship, a certain type of character into my life that wasn't good for me, but I was just in that loop, addicted to the dopamine rush, and ultimately coming out of that to learn how to trust myself so I don't make the same mistakes, and then learn to really generate my own sense of self and sense of validation. And with that, I'm also looking forward to spawn a series of talks and interviews. I don't know if it's going to be on Instagram Live or in a podcast form, which is called Inner Beauty Queen. And I really want to focus so much more on the inner qualities that make a woman beautiful. Because outer beauty fades, as we know, we all are heading in the same direction. We're all getting older. But something, if you cultivate those beautiful inner qualities inside, they will never fade, and you'll continue to be beautiful from the inside, attracting so many people and inspiring and changing the world because of those inner qualities. So I really want to remind women, young women especially, who are in this industry, because it's so easy to forget, right, about those inner qualities and just focus on the outer beauty and how to make myself more beautiful, and with makeup, with plastic surgery, with clothes, and to win a title, and then get lost in that matrix, in that outer beauty system that is really just a system of control to keep us trapped. But that's another topic. But for women to really start valuing themselves for more than just that objectification. And I think that's super important. And more books in
That's
the future,
awesome.
for sure.
Oh, I think that would be very much what we would hope for. Natalie Glebova, I really can't thank you enough for all your time today, and really enjoyed our chat, and really wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much, Roger. The pleasure was mine. You're such a light in this world. Thank you for doing what you do and spreading the good side of pageantry. I love that.
That brings us to the end of my conversation with Miss Universe 2005, Natalie Glebova. Truly the highlight of my time so far as the pageant nerd. Regardless of where you land on Miss Universe 2025, this is a perspective of someone who has, for decades, lived both the pinnacle of the competition and the responsibility that follows it. This conversation isn't about one result. It's about trust, integrity, and how pageantry can evolve without losing the values that made it matter in the first place. As always, I encourage respectful and thoughtful discussion in the comments. And if you'd like to see more in-depth interviews and analysis like this, please like the video and subscribe. Thank you again, Natalie, for your openness and for sharing your perspective. And to all of you for watching, till the very end of this video no less, I sincerely thank you. I'm the Pageant Nerd. Bye for now.